The supermarket's fluorescent lights always make peaches look braver than they taste. I was weighing 2 pounds at 9:18 a.m. when Amber's voice sliced the air behind me. "Some grandmother," she said, not even whispering. Brandon didn't correct her. He stared into the freezer case like there was an answer between the pizzas and the frost. My grandson waved from the end of the aisle and I raised my hand, but Amber tugged him back, the plastic wheels of the cart squealing like a small animal. At 68, I don't shout, I document. I put the peaches on the scale, wrote $3.96 on the paper label, and slipped it into my pocket like it mattered. I had paid their rent for 5 years, one $200 when it started, one $450 after the last increase, plus their car, $380, insurance, $160, daycare, $650, and the lights, $240. Numbers have a way of becoming a person's real biography. "Ruth," Brandon said finally, voice brittle, "we're in a rush." I nodded like a woman who had time. "I'll be quick," I said, and took exactly 3 deliberate steps toward my grandson. "Subscribe to our channel. This helps our work reach more people." Amber pivoted the cart, putting metal between us. "School's been hard," she added, letting the word hard float like bait. We both knew what came next. The private academy with the brochure that smelled like cologne and false promises. $15,000 to wash their hands of public school and public accountability. "I'll think," I said last week, the first time I had used that verb instead of "I'll pay." Since then, my weekends with the boy had evaporated. The phone picked up and hung up. Text bubbles appeared like ghosts and disappeared like cowards. Love had turned into logistics. At checkout, Amber leaned close enough for me to count the stitches in her cardigan. "He needs a better environment," she said. "Some kids get bullies. Some get grandparents who care." The cashier's eyes flicked to me, then to the total. $48.72. I handed over my card and felt the old muscle memory twitch, the part of me that believes peace can be purchased at the register. Back in the parking lot, Brandon loaded their trunk with the quick, guilty efficiency of a man who has already written the apology, but not the confession. "Mom," he said, softer now, "we're thinking of driving up to Amber's cousin's cabin next weekend. Quebec, fresh air. You and Dad should come. Family time." The invitation hung there, newly laundered, still damp. "Text me the details," I answered. "We'll see." At 8:07 p.m., Amber knocked on our door with a smile that showed every tooth but no warmth. "Could you bring an extra bag?" she asked, lifting a black overnight bag with a bright red zipper tab. "Your SUV has space, fishing gear, board games, you know?" The bag was light in her hand and heavy in my doorway. I set it by the hall table, on top of the church bulletin for Mother's Day luncheon, May 12th. That night, I lay awake and listened to my husband's steady breathing. Half of marriage is learning the difference between a silence that heals and a silence that hides. Somewhere past midnight, I realized I had been paying for quiet and getting noise. Suspense. And yet, at 10:52 a.m. one morning later, my son would call me just to say, "I love you," and that's when the clock started. We left Albany just after sunrise, coffee sweating rings onto the cup holders, the overnight bag with the red zipper tab buckled in like a fourth passenger. The highway north always felt like a promise. Clean shoulder lines, barns folded into mist, radio preachers reminding you the truth doesn't need volume. My husband James kept his hands at 10 and 2, a man who believed steering was a moral act. 2 hours to Champlain, he said. Weather's clear. My phone buzzed at 10:31 a.m. A bank alert for $40, gas at a station off exit 35. Strange, because we hadn't stopped. I texted Brandon, "Need fuel?" 3 dots waltzed, vanished, returned. "We're good." A minute later, Kayla's name flashed. Amber's sister, the one who sent holiday cards late and apologies earlier. I let it ring out. Families are orchestras. You can't play every instrument and still hear the melody. At 10:52 a.m., Brandon called. "Mom, quick question," he said, syrup poured over gravel. "The bag Amber gave you, you have it, right?" I looked at the black shape against our grandson's dinosaur blanket. "Yes," I said. "Haven't touched a thing." He inhaled like he was about to dive. "Good. And, I love you, Mom. I really, really love you. In 42 years, my son has said those words at graduations, at flu seasons, at the end of hospital hallways, but never on a clean morning with the sun behaving. Love, at the wrong hour, is a fire alarm. At my age, I don't panic. I verify. James, I whispered, pull off at the next exit. He didn't ask why. 50 years teach a man when to trade answers for breaks. We rolled into a rest area where the map in the lobby still showed the border as a cheerful line. I took the bag into the family restroom, locked the door, and washed my hands for no good reason. The red tab felt hot. I unzipped. Plastic. 3 bricks, tight-wrapped, tucked under my grandson's softest pajamas. The blue ones with rocket ships that always take off when he runs down our hallway. My throat closed around a prayer with no words. I took photos. I checked the side pocket. A bank deposit pouch, empty except for a torn post-it with Champlain scrawled and a small X. Someone had done math on me. James knocked once. Ruth? I opened the door and let him see. His face moved through grief, fury, and then something sterner. We're going home, he said. Now. My phone lit up. Brandon again. Then Amber. Then the group thread Lake Trip, where Amber posted a selfie from a gas station I'd never seen. Almost there. The timestamp matched my bank alert. Exit 35. I stared at her sunglasses in the photo. My reflection small in each lens, a woman reduced to a gleam. We U-turned. My pulse slowed the way it does when pain finally admits its size. I forwarded the photos to a fresh email titled Receipts. I saved the call log. I took a picture of the torn post-it against the sink's chrome. When we reached Albany, the sky was the color of old nickels. Brandon and Amber were waiting in their driveway. Mom, why did you turn around? Brandon called, nerves snapping in his voice. I placed the bag on their doormat like a casserole nobody asked for. I know what's in the bag, I said. Brandon gripped my arm and hissed, If you walk into that church tomorrow, I'll... The thing about a threat half-spoken, if you walk into that church tomorrow, I'll... is that it echoes louder than if he'd finished. James steered us home while I folded my hands to keep them from shaking. When you're 68 and a black church woman who keeps receipts, your hands are your filing cabinets. On our kitchen table, I spread the life I had financed. A yellow legal pad. January 2019, won $200 rent. April 2020, wala phones $50 after the increase. March 2021, 380 car note. September 2022, 650 daycare. February 2023, $240 utilities. 5 years, an average $2,630 each month, roughly $157,800 in love disguised as bills. I totaled it twice. Numbers don't hug you back. They simply tell the truth. Memory walked in without knocking. June 14, 2012, the night Brandon rang our bell with a cardboard box from his job in his arms, and tears he tried to swallow. It's temporary, Mom, he said, placing the box on our sofa like it was an infant. Inside were a stapler, a coffee mug that said boss, and a photo of him holding my grandson as a newborn, the boy's head the size of an orange. I'll find something by August, he promised, the month already wearing a halo in his mouth. I wrote a check for $600 then. Just this once, I told him. He kissed my cheek. I'll never put you in a position to choose between me and your peace again, he said. And the universe filed that sentence under foreshadowing. Back in the present, I took the torn post-it from the overnight bag, Champlain and an X, slid it under my Bible ribbon at Psalm 121 like a strange bookmark. I printed the photos of the plastic-wrapped bricks from my phone and labeled the backs in blue ink. 11:06 a.m. Rest area, red zipper tab. I logged the 10:52 a.m. call where my son said, I love you, like it was a will. Silence pressed on the windows. Then my phone lit up with Kayla. Call me, it's important. The sister who always arrived late to holidays, never to drama. I let it go to voicemail. James peered over my shoulder. You going to ring Border Patrol? He asked, voice careful on the edge of anger. Not yet, I said. If I turn my son in, I won't recognize my face in the mirror. If I do nothing, I won't recognize my soul. I opened the black bag again, slower this time. The lining had a rip, a thin V where a seamstress would shake her head. My finger found paper there, crisp, institutional, the kind that smells like toner and instructions. I tugged it free, a deposit slip, 3-part carbon, pre-filled in block letters. My name typed in the depositor line, Ruth Henderson, and a figure circled in violent ink, $85,000, cash. No account number, just Banque Laurentienne, QC, stamped faintly, and a time I could not unsee. 10:02 a.m. Someone had penciled after cross in the memo. My head buzzed like a bad fluorescent light. Amber's some grandmother was a minor sin. This was identity theft, dressed up as gratitude. I imagined myself at a counter under an indifferent fluorescent tube, pushing bricks across like pastries while a teller asked for my ID. Brandon's half-threat reassembled itself. If I walked into the church, perhaps he'd tell everyone I had volunteered. Or worse, tell the law. I slid the slip into a plastic sheet protector like a domestic war trophy. I don't raise my voice, I raise evidence. James set a mug of tea beside me. "We'll do this slow," he said, "and we'll do it right." I breathed in the steam, thought of Mother's Day, May 12th, of fellowship hall folding chairs, of a room where truth might carry. The legal pad stared up at me with my handwriting and our history. The number $85,000 glared like a siren. And then my phone pinged with a bank text about a new linked user I had not approved. But why was my name printed on that deposit slip before we even left Albany? I drove to the copy shop on Central Avenue like a woman carrying her own autopsy report. The kid at the counter, nose ring, kind eyes, didn't blink when I asked for 5 color copies of a deposit slip and 3 of a Post-it note. "Watermark these copy," I said. "I'll keep the originals." He slid me a loyalty punch card. I slid it back. "I already have a punch card," I said, and lifted my left eyebrow at heaven. At home, I opened a new manila folder and wrote, "Lake Trip, Receipts." Inside went the originals, the torn Post-it, the photos of the bricks, the 10:52 a.m. call log, the deposit slip with my name pre-typed like a prophecy. I printed my bank alert from 10:31 a.m. showing $40. 00 at Quickmart exit 35, which we had not visited. Brandon and Amber had. The timestamp matched her smiling selfie in the Lake Trip thread, sunglasses gleaming with a speck of me. Kayla called again. This time I answered. "Ruth, it's Kayla. I don't want any part of this," she said, words tumbling, shame elbowing through. "They told me it was fishing gear." At the station, Amber handed me a bag to put in their car while she paid. I saw something. I told her I was out. "If you need me to say that, I will." Her voice cracked. "I'm not clean in this, but I'm not dirty like that." "Write it down, Kayla," I said, choosing the quietest weapon. "Time, place, what you saw. Text me a photo of the gas station sign, your timestamp." Seconds later, my phone dinged. Quickmart E35, 10:29 a.m. A blue awning, the corner of Amber's sleeve. I printed it and clipped it to the deposit slip. N2 had arrived to stand beside N1. James came in with the mail. "From church," he said, handing me an envelope. Inside, Mother's Day luncheon program with my name on the dessert roster. Peach cobbler, naturally. I pictured the fellowship hall, the microphone that squeals if you hold it wrong, the aunties in hats larger than their grievances. I do not humiliate people for sport, but I do let truth breathe where it can be heard. I called Mr. Patel, our attorney, and read him the items. "Do not touch the contraband again," he said. "Photograph, document, secure. If they try to flip the story, you'll need a chain of custody of your own." He paused. "And Ruth, freeze any joint access. Today." I logged into our bank and removed Brandon and Amber as authorized users. A window popped up. "New linked user authorized at 9:58 a.m. My stomach dropped. Name on file, Ruth A. Henderson, me, and an address I didn't recognize, a P.O. box near the border. "Print it," Mr. Patel said when I told him. "That's your N2.5, paper trail of intent." Evening fell like a curtain nobody asked for. I ironed my church dress, placed the Lake Trip, receipts folder into a navy tote, and slid the deposit slip into a separate clear sleeve, front and center. James watched me stage my life like evidence in a museum exhibit. "You're taking this to Pastor Lewis?" he asked. "I'm taking it to the room where my reputation lives," I said. "If they plan to speak my name into a rumor, I'll speak it into a record." Before bed, I opened the black bag one last time, not to touch the bricks, Mr. Patel's warning sang in my ears, but to check every pocket. In the smallest sleeve, hidden under a sewn-on care label, I found a thermal receipt scrap I had missed. Quickmart E35, money transfer code 7Q13C, clerk L. Moreno, 10:33 a.m. Printed above the code, in tiny letters a clerk never notices, was a loyalty field. Customer name, Brandon Henderson. I didn't need a sermon, I needed a stapler. I added the scrap to the clear sleeve, placed the sleeve on top of the tote, and set the tote by the door like shoes for a morning run. If Brandon's name was on the station's receipt and mine on the deposit slip, whose name did they plan to write on the crime? By the time the church bells struck 9 that Sunday, my tote bag sat by my feet like a second heartbeat. Inside, the receipts, the photos, the slip with my name typed as if I had volunteered for sin. On the surface, it was just paper, but every page was a ledger of betrayal. James poured black coffee and asked, "What's our next move?" "Numbers first," I said, lifting the legal pad. "If I show them stories, they'll call me dramatic. If I show them math, they'll call me correct." I listed again what I had covered since January 2019. 5 years of subsidies, $157,800. I compared it against our retirement savings, a careful pile of $240,000 we had built like bricks for a house of peace. My children had already hauled away 2/3 of my walls. The peach cobbler recipe lay beside the math, as if sugar and butter could cancel debt and deceit. I folded it once, slid it into the program. Peach cobbler had become my disguise. Sweet crust covering a bitter core. The phone rang at 11:14 a.m. Brandon. "Mom, about yesterday." His voice was a man rehearsing innocence. "We were stressed. Amber, she didn't mean what she said." "What did you mean, Brandon?" My voice came out low, teacher's tone. "You said I owe you. Explain the math." He exhaled, quick, like a student caught. "Mom, we're drowning. The house is 90 days from foreclosure. If we lose it, we lose everything. Amber thought the Canada trip was a solution," I cut in. "A solution with bricks under pajamas?" "Silence, then. You wouldn't understand." "I understand debt," I said. "I paid mine with decades of sweat in a school office where children respected me more than my own son does." He hung up. "When silence is an answer, you write it down." I logged the call, 11:14 a.m., duration 1:08. By afternoon, Amber posted a photo online, her arm around my grandson, captioned, "Family first, always." The irony was a neon sign only I could see. I checked the Lake Trip thread. New message, Amber. "Border closed for checks. We'll try again soon." Try again. The words froze me more than plastic bricks. This wasn't a one-time temptation. It was a strategy. My grandson's bedtime, my pension, my name, all chess pieces in a game I never agreed to play. I looked at the church luncheon program again. Mother's Day, May 12th, 2024. 3 weeks. That was my clock. By then, I would either be the foolish grandmother who covered their sins or the woman who turned evidence into oxygen. James kissed my temple. "We'll hold the line," he said. The line wasn't just financial. It was spiritual, social, public, and once crossed, it wouldn't be redrawn. But when Amber canceled my next visit with my grandson, I realized the line I feared losing most was 8 years old and called me Grandma. The boy's voice on the phone was thin with longing. "Grandma, can I come over Saturday?" I could hear the game console humming behind him, the muffled irritation in Amber's voice. Then the line clicked. Connection ended. I redialed. Amber answered, honey dripping over gravel. "He's busy, Ruth. Projects, friends. You know how kids are." But I did know. 8-year-olds don't choose distance from the woman who taught them to read Green Eggs and Ham twice in a row without skipping pages. Distance was manufactured. Sabotage disguised as scheduling. By Friday, my invitations were answered with silence. By Saturday, my grandson's shoes were not by my door. The absence thundered louder than his laugh ever had. James noticed me polishing the silverware we hadn't used since Easter. "You're setting a table for ghosts," he said gently. "I'm setting it for proof," I answered. "Absence is a record too." I noted the canceled visits on the legal pad. April 20th, April 27th, May 4th. In law, in God's eyes, in history, patterns matter. That evening, a knock. Not family. Kayla again. She carried a grocery bag with 2 items, a prepaid phone, still in plastic, and a folded paper. "Amber used my ID to set this up," she whispered, eyes darting. "Said it was for privacy. I don't want my name tangled with theirs anymore." I unfolded the paper. Activation receipt, April 19th, 2024, 2:22 p.m. Clerk signature, L. Moreno. Same as the gas station slip. My stomach tightened. The same clerk, same time window, same orbit. Kayla looked at me with weary defiance. They think blood buys silence, but silence costs more than talking. I added her receipt to the lake trip, receipts folder. N3 was shaping itself. Testimony. The kind no eraser can smudge. Sunday came. Church pews creaked with gossip in hats. Pastor Lewis preached from Proverbs. The borrower is servant to the lender. I heard Brandon's voice muttering, "You owe us." After service, Amber approached me by the punch table, smile stiff. "We're planning Mother's Day lunch at the house, Ruth. Just family." I matched her smile with mine. "I'll be at church that day. I'll bring peach cobbler." Her eyes flicked, calculation replacing charm. "Suit yourself. Suit yourself. Code for we will tighten the leash on your grandson." I saw the plan. Cancel visits, isolate me, corner me with love as ransom. But I had already decided. I wouldn't fight for proximity. I would fight for permanence. Custody wasn't a word I had spoken yet, but it was a word I had written at the top of my pad that morning. When we drove home, James asked, "What's your next step?" I touched the tote. "I'll prepare a peach cobbler, and I'll prepare to speak." But 2 nights later, a voicemail from Brandon made my blood ice. "If you cut us off, Mom, we'll make sure the law knows whose bag it really was." Brandon's voicemail replayed itself in my ears long after the phone had gone silent. "If you cut us off, Mom, we'll make sure the law knows whose bag it really was." The words scratched the inside of my skull. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my freedom as collateral. It wasn't a son's voice. It was a collector's. For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt myself bending. Fear has a way of softening spines you thought were steel. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the peach cobbler recipe card, and wondered if all this pain could end with one check. If I wired the money, paid their mortgage arrears, funded the school tuition, would I get my grandson back? Would the threats stop? James came in quietly, setting down the day's mail. "Honey," he said, "you're looking at that card like it's scripture." I smiled weakly. Maybe it is, sugar and flour to bind a broken covenant. But the mail told another gospel, an envelope from their lender, addressed mistakenly to our house, since I'd once co-signed for Brandon in better days. Notice of default. Amount due, $14,962. Deadline, May 12th, 2024, May 12th, Mother's Day. The deadline and the luncheon colliding like 2 trains on one track. My hands trembled. If I paid it, the house would be saved, the boys' room preserved, the illusion maintained. If I refused, they would drag me into a courtroom or worse, a cell. I was cornered, not by walls, but by blood. That night I dreamed of my grandson's small voice. "Grandma, can I come over Saturday?" Except in the dream, he was behind bars and his shoes were too big for his feet. I woke with sweat dampening my nightgown and shame coating my chest. By morning, I had written a check for $15,000 and sealed it in an envelope. James saw it on the counter. "You're giving them the win," he said softly. "I'm giving myself peace," I lied. But when I lifted the envelope, my hand refused to drop it in the mailbox. My body revolted. I couldn't do it. Enabling wasn't peace. It was surrender. I tore the check in 2, then into quarters, then into confetti. The phone rang at noon. Amber's voice, honey over knives. "So, will you help us or not? The deadline is May 12th. "I'm praying on it," I answered, neither yes nor no. She sighed like a woman already planning Plan B. When the call ended, James placed his hand over mine. "You didn't send it." "No," I said. "But I nearly did. That's defeat enough." The house felt smaller, the air thinner. I was losing ground, not because they'd won, but because I had almost handed it to them. And then, at 4:07 p.m., Kayla called back and whispered words that turned my near defeat into a different kind of weapon. "Ruth, I recorded something you need to hear." Kayla's voice on the phone was shaky, like a violin string stretched too tight. "Ruth, I was with Amber 2 days ago. She was talking on speaker, didn't know I was recording. I think you need this." A pause, then an audio file arrived. I pressed play. Amber's voice, sharp and careless. "She'll drive. She never asks. Old women don't look suspicious. By the time she realizes, we'll be across." Brandon's voice followed, lower, desperate. "If she balks, we'll tell them it was her idea. Who's gonna believe a 70-year-old woman over her own son?" My stomach clenched. There it was. Confession wrapped in contempt. Proof not just of the plan, but of their willingness to sacrifice me. I saved the file twice, once to my phone, once to my cloud. Then I forwarded it to Mr. Patel, subject line, N3, audio. His reply came within minutes. "This is gold. Guard it like oxygen. Print transcript." Kayla's voice returned. "I don't want their sins landing on me. If you need me to testify, I will. But keep my name out of it until the last possible moment. You've already done more than you know," I told her. That night, James and I sat at the kitchen table again. But this time, the air was different. He leaned forward, his face catching the light. "We're not the ones drowning anymore, Ruth. They are. And now you've got the rope." I nodded, though my chest was still heavy. Having the rope meant choosing, to save or to strangle. Mothers aren't built for strangling, but survival sometimes requires it. I transcribed the audio word for word, labeling it April 21st, 2024, 3:12 p.m., Amber and Brandon, recorded by Kayla. Then I printed it on letterhead, signed and dated the bottom. Have you been through something similar? Tell us your story in the comments below. We read every comment. It's important for us to know we're not alone. Witness, Ruth Henderson. As I stacked it into the folder, I realized something. The fellowship hall on May 12th wasn't just a luncheon anymore. It was a courtroom waiting for a judge. And every auntie, every deacon, every cousin would be my jury. Still, fear pressed on me. Brandon's words, "We'll tell them it was her idea," clawed at my ribs. What if they did? What if people believed them? I was one woman, quiet, steady, the kind who never raised her voice. Would anyone think me capable of smuggling drugs? Or would that quietness make me the perfect suspect? At 9:47 p.m., my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. A clipped voice. "Mrs. Henderson, this is Officer Martinez with Border Patrol. We're increasing checks at Champlain. Have you traveled recently?" I gripped the handset so hard my knuckles whitened. "No," I said firmly, "but you'll want to watch Who Tries next weekend." I hung up, my heart pounding. The clock was moving faster now. May 12th was coming, and so was judgment. But when my grandson whispered over the phone the next day, "Grandma, Mommy says you're in trouble with the police," I knew the battlefield had shifted to his little ears. I have never liked gas stations, the fluorescence, the way time puddles between pumps. But Quickmart Exit 35 became a pilgrimage site. I parked where the camera could see me walk in and asked for the manager. A young man in a polo appeared, the name tag reading El Moreno, the same clerk on the thermal strip in my folder. "Morning," I said, placing a peach cobbler slice in a plastic container on the counter. "My name is Ruth Henderson. I need help verifying times on your CCTV. April 21st, 10:29 to 10:33 a.m. His eyes flicked to the dessert, then to my face. "I can't just," he began. "I'm not asking you to release footage," I said gently. "I'm asking you to let an old woman look at the clock while she writes down what she already knows." I slid the activation receipt across, the $40 bank alert printout, and a copy of Amber's selfie with the blue awning. So my lawyer stops wasting your time with subpoenas. We stood shoulder to shoulder before a wall of screens born to catch petty theft, but now tasked with bigger sins. He scrubbed back to 10:29 a.m. There they were. Amber at pump 3, sunglasses a mirror of arrogance. Kayla, ponytail tight, at the passenger door, holding a bank deposit pouch I recognized from the lining of the black bag. Brandon pacing by the hood, glancing at the store like anxiety had him on a leash. "Freeze there," I said when Amber stepped inside. The camera caught her at the counter, head bent toward Moreno, gesturing with 2 fingers, like counting bricks. In the reflection of the lottery case, I saw the outline of a small black pouch handed over and back. The timestamp, 10:33 a.m. "You can't record this," he said reflexively. "I wouldn't dream of it," I lied, letting my phone's camera drink the screen from the corner of my purse. Old women don't look suspicious. Back in the car, I watched the gorilla video twice, the way a surgeon checks her stitches. Frame by frame, Kayla passes Amber the pouch. Amber pockets it, then texts. Brandon looks at his watch. The pump clicks. The clock rolls. "Almost there," she would post minutes later in Lake Trip. "Almost where?" "At the UPS store. I paid for notary service." "Sign and date," the woman said, glasses on a chain. I signed a statement titled Observation at Quickmart E35, detailing persons, times, actions, and that I had not altered the black bag since discovering contraband. She stamped the paper with a satisfying violence. Home again, I laid N3 in the folder. Audio transcript from Kayla, CCTV stills, blurred but telling, notarized statement and receipt copies. I mailed digital duplicates to Mr. Patel and to an email addressed to myself with the subject, "If something happens to me." When you plan for the worst feels like it's already been taxed. I called Pastor Lewis. "I need 5 minutes at the Mother's Day luncheon," I said. "Is this a testimony, Sister Ruth?" "It's the kind that keeps a child safe," I answered. He cleared his throat. "Bring what you have. Truth is a guest we always seat up front." At 6:41 p.m., Brandon texted, "We're family. Don't do anything stupid. Family is not a word, it's a receipt." I replied with none. I set my navy tote by the door. On top, in a clear sleeve, I placed the deposit slip with my name typed, and the bank stamp bled purple. The bank stamp read, $85,000, cash. The best traps don't snap, they settle. I woke before dawn the week of Mother's Day, ironed my dress to a soft edge, and staged the fellowship hall in my mind, like a courtroom. Ushers as bailiffs, aunties as jurors, peach cobbler cooling in the role of character witness. Preparation is prayer with a clipboard. I made 4 packets labeled in blue ink. Pastor Lewis, Deacon Board, CPS contact, myself. Inside each, the timeline, call logs, bank alerts, deposit slip copy, CCTV stills, Kayla's audio transcript, notarized statement, and a cover sheet that read, "I am not seeking gossip. I am seeking protection for a child, and my name." I called Child Protective Services and asked for an informational consult. If parents engage in cross-border trafficking and attempt to enlist a grandparent as courier, what safeguards exist for the child? I kept my voice level, my details factual. The woman on the line took notes that sounded like mercy. "Document everything," she said. "If there's a public incident, our emergency line is open. Keep the child's school informed." I informed the principal of Lincoln Elementary, the same building where I once sharpened pencils and futures. "You may see a custody filing," I said. "I want you to know the child will attend regardless of adult drama." In my will, I changed 2 lines, guardianship contingencies and an addendum titled Emergency Temporary Custody Intent. The notary's stamp fell like a gavel. James read and signed his pieces. "We're not shouting," he said. "We're arranging the furniture so the truth has a place to sit." I assembled a small black USB drive, labeled Open If I Falter, and taped it under the fellowship hall podium when no one was looking. The way a soldier caches ammunition along a route they pray they won't need. At 7:12 p.m. on May 10th, I texted Brandon and Amber. Mother's Day service starts at 10. Lunch after. There's cobbler. The graciousness felt like silk over armor. Amber replied within a minute. We'll be there. Family first. The phrase had become a mask so thin I could see the contempt through it. On May 11th, I baked. Flour fogged the air. Peaches surrendered their juice. Cinnamon made the kitchen a sanctuary. I measured like a woman who had been measuring her worth for 5 years and was done with that recipe. That night, I sat with my grandson's photo, the one where his knees are grass-stained and his smile is missing a tooth, and practiced what I would say. Not long, not loud. Calm is an instrument. If I wavered, the USB would play Kayla's recording in my stead. If they shouted, I would hand packets to ushers. If they lied, I would ask Pastor to read the timestamps out loud. Time is the courtroom's hymn. Before bed, I checked the tote one last time. Lake trip. Receipts on top, copies beneath, cobbler carrier washed and ready. James laid his suit out. His tie was the exact sober blue of a signature line. "You're sure?" he asked. "I'm done letting threats decide my posture," I said. "Tomorrow," we stopped whispering. My phone buzzed as I switched off the lamp. "Brandon, if you walk into that church tomorrow and open your mouth, I swear to God, if you step into that church tomorrow, I'll—" Mother's Day morning tasted like metal on my tongue. I set the cobbler by the door and slid the lake trip, receipts folder into my navy tote. Before I could lift the handle, tires ground on our driveway. Brandon's sedan. Amber in the passenger seat, sunglasses already an alibi. James stood behind me, a quiet wall. I stepped onto the porch. The air smelled like cut grass and sermons. Brandon started talking before the engine quit. "Mom, don't do this," he said, hands up like traffic cones. "This is family business. Church isn't for this. Church is for truth," I said. "Family is supposed to be too." Amber slid out, glossy and brittle. "You misunderstood some things, Ruth," she said, voice sugared and poisoned. "Brandon gets dramatic. He's been depressed. Depression doesn't type my name on a Canadian deposit slip for $85,000. Cash," I replied, drawing the clear sleeve from the tote and letting it catch the morning light. Depression doesn't ask El Moreno at Quickmart Exit 35 to process a money transfer code 7Q13C at 10:33 a.m. Your sunglasses caught the lottery case reflection. Amber's jaw tightened. "You're making leaps." "I'm making timestamps," I said, handing Brandon a printed call log. 10:52 a.m. You told me you loved me. We were 38 minutes from Champlain. You'd already staged the bag. That's not love. That's a send-off. He flinched. Shame cross-faded into anger. "You owe us," he snapped, then tried to swallow the words. "After everything you—" "Paid," I finished. "I paid. For 5 years, $2,730 a month on average. Rent, car, daycare, lights. You didn't drown. You leaned." He took a step closer, lowering his voice to the tone men use when they run out of arguments and reach for fear. "If you open your mouth in that church, I'll tell them you did it, that you asked to be part of it, that it was your idea to bring my own grandchild's pajamas to a border," I said softly. "Brandon, son, listen to yourself." Amber reached for his sleeve, eyes scanning the windows of our quiet street. "Let's go," she hissed. "She's bluffing." I lifted my phone and tapped play. Kayla's recording poured into the morning like a weather report. Amber's voice. "She'll drive. She never asks." Brandon's, "If she balks, we'll tell them it was her idea." Amber's sunglasses finally reflected something honest. Panic. Brandon lunged, grabbing for my phone. James was already moving, one palm to our son's chest. Steady, not violent, the way you stop a toddler from running into traffic. "Enough," James said, voice a held note. I looked at the man I had raised and saw a boy chasing shortcuts in a world that charges interest on lies. "You don't have to come," I told them. "But I'm going." Amber tried a new angle, tears arriving on command. "If you do this," she said, "you'll lose us. You'll never see him again." "You took him already," I said. "You traded Saturdays for silence." Brandon's lips trembled, rage searching for a target. "You think those people will believe you over your own son?" "I think they'll believe dates and amounts," I said, tightening my grip on the tote. "At my age, I don't shout. I document. I stepped off the porch. The cobbler carrier bumped against my leg like a metronome. As I reached for the car door, Amber whispered, "Then we'll see who gets to the microphone first." The fellowship hall smelled like lilies, starch, and deviled eggs. Paper banners read, "Happy Mother's Day," and the punch bowl trembled under its own reflection. Hats bloomed. Children wove between chairs like bright threads. I placed the cobbler among pies and lifted my navy tote onto a chair near the podium. Amber and Brandon arrived moments later, holding my grandson between them like a shield. The aunties cooed. The deacons nodded. Someone tapped the mic and said it worked when it squealed. Pastor Lewis caught my eye and tipped his head toward the dais. 5 minutes. A lifetime. Amber moved fast. Heels, honey, hurricane. She reached the podium with the timing of a thief who knows where the cameras are. "Happy Mother's Day," she sang, voice buttered. "I just want to say how grateful I am for my mother-in-law. She's passionate. Sometimes she gets confused." A warm ripple of polite laughter. "If you hear anything today that sounds wild, just know we're dealing with some family issues. Private ones." The room shifted. Pastor's jaw set. I stood, lifted my tote, and walked toward the mic. My grandson's face flickered with confusion and hope. Brandon took a step as if to block me. James's presence behind me turned that step into a flinch. Pastor handed me the microphone. The room did what rooms do when a quiet woman stands. It listened. "I'm Sister Ruth Henderson," I said. "I've been a member here 32 years. I raised 3 children in those pews and retired from Lincoln Elementary, where some of y'all's babies learn to read. I don't have a speech. I have receipts." A ripple. A hush. I placed Pastor Lewis on the lectern. "On April 21st, my son and his wife invited me on a family trip. At 10:31 a.m., my bank alerted $40 at Quick Mart exit 35, though I had not stopped. At 10:52 a.m., my son called and told me he loved me. At 11:06 a.m., I opened an overnight bag with a red zipper tab and photographed 3 plastic-wrapped bricks under my grandson's pajamas. A collective intake of breath. I laid down the deposit slip copy. This was pre-typed with my name, Ruth Henderson, and $85,000, cash, Banque Laurentienne, QC. The memo reads, "After cross." I did not type my name on this. Somebody planned to. Amber laughed, a brittle sound. "She's making this up." I nodded to the ushers. They moved as if we had practiced, placing packet, deacon board at the head table, then handing packet, myself copies to 2 aunties who read faster than rumor runs. "Audio," I said simply, and Pastor touched the small USB I had taped under the podium. Kayla's recording filled the hall, every fluorescent hum, every contemptuous word. Amber's voice, "She'll drive, she never asks." Brandon's, "If she balks, we'll tell them it was her idea." Silence detonated, then murmur, then stillness again, because stillness is what truth demands after it arrives. Brandon's face collapsed into a child's storm. "Mom," he said, voice shaking. "I was scared." "I am too," I answered. "But I'm scared of different things." Amber reached for bravado and found only shards. "You're framing us," she hissed. "You put that in the bag yourself." I raised the notarized statement. I did not handle the contraband after discovery. I documented, I called counsel, and I prepared to protect my name and this child. Pastor cleared his throat. "I believe we've heard enough." A deacon dialed a number he already knew from years of shepherding messy flocks. Across the hall, my grandson stood very still, staring at the floor, as if the tile might explain grown people. I knelt and opened my arms. He came. Small body, big tremor. And then the church doors swung open, and Officer Martinez stepped in with 2 uniforms and said, "Mrs. Henderson, we need to speak with you, now." Officer Martinez's uniform looked too sharp for our soft fellowship hall, but truth is never overdressed. He approached with 2 colleagues and a face that knew this wouldn't be tidy. Pastor Lewis stood beside me like a witness who'd already taken an oath. "Mrs. Henderson," Martinez said quietly, "we received a tip regarding a planned border crossing and a senior being coerced into transport. We also have ongoing checks tied to Champlain. He glanced at Amber and Brandon. We need to verify identities, items, and timelines. I handed him packet, CPS contact, and my driver's license. Everything I have is here, I said. The contraband is not in my possession. I photographed and documented it without handling further. Amber straightened, ready to perform. Officer, she's confused, she began, the vowels polished. She's been forgetful. We were trying to help her. Pastor tapped the podium, and Kayla's audio replayed a single line. She'll drive. She never asks. You could hear the fellowship hall's air conditionings clicking, the way guilt makes an echo louder. Martinez's pen paused mid-scratch. He turned to Brandon. Sir? Brandon's jaw worked like a stuck hinge. It wasn't. We were stressed. The house. He swallowed. It got out of hand. Where's the bag now? Martinez asked. At their house, I said evenly. I placed it on their doorstep and left. I have photographs taken at 11:06 a.m. the day of discovery, plus a notarized statement declaring minimal contact. I can retrieve the memory card from my phone. Cloud backups time-stamped. He nodded. We'll need voluntary consent to search, or a warrant. He looked at Amber. Ma'am? Amber laughed once, a sound like glass tapping glass. Search away, she said. Too fast, too bright. There's nothing. Kayla, who had slipped in unseen, lifted a small shaking hand. Officer, I saw Amber place a bank pouch in the black bag at Quick Mart exit 35, 10:29 a.m. to 10:33 a.m. I'll sign a statement. The room pivoted. Families know when the current shifts. Martinez's radio crackled. He stepped aside, listened, then returned with that particular federal calm. Units are en route to the residence. He turned to me again. Mrs. Henderson, for the child's welfare, is there an immediate caregiver available? James stepped forward. Yes, he said, the word shaped like a shelter. Us. A CPS worker arrived faster than rumors usually do. Ms. Beeman, clipboard, kindness, and authority. She spoke to my grandson at eye level, to me at heart level. We filled out emergency relative placement forms while the deacons ferried paper cups of punch like communion for the nervous. A deacon's phone buzzed, then another, then mine. A text from Mr. Patel. Search executed. Narcotics seized. Expect arrest. Stand by for custody hearing date. I exhaled a breath that had lived in my lungs for weeks. Amber's mask cracked first. You did this, she hissed at me, mascara threatening to run. You're destroying your own family. No, Amber, I said, voice steady as a ledger. I'm refusing to let you destroy mine. The doors opened again. An officer in plainclothes motioned to Martinez, whispered, nods. Martinez addressed the room. Amber Henderson and Brandon Henderson, you are under arrest for possession with intent to distribute and attempted conspiracy to smuggle contraband across an international border. Gasps stitched the room into silence. Then only the nylon whisper of zip ties. My grandson clutched my hand so tight I felt tomorrow in my bones. Brandon looked at me once, eyes red, boy and man warring. Mom, he said, almost a whimper. Please. I will care for your son, I answered, because pity is not the same as permission. They were led out past the peach cobbler and the punch bowl and the aunties who have seen worse and still managed to sing. Ms. Beeman squeezed my shoulder. We'll process temporary custody now, she said. Courthouse first thing in the morning. I nodded. The microphone watched us like a witness that doesn't blink. That night, a letter slid under my door with no return address and 4 words. You should have stayed quiet. Fear arrived folded once. No envelope. 4 words cut out of a stranger's mouth and pasted into my hallway. I picked up the letter with tongs like it was a hot pan, slid it into a sheet protector, and added it to Lake Trip. Receipts. Threats are just more documents, and documents are what I speak. Morning lit our kitchen the color of mercy. My grandson ate oatmeal with the concentration of a child who knows adults are building a new room for his life, and he wants to help by finishing breakfast. James buttoned his suit like armor. I wore calm like a tailored dress. In family court, fluorescent lights hummed their indifferent hymn. Mr. Patel met us with a stack and a nod. Emergency temporary custody hearings, I learned, are built on 3 planks. safety, stability, and paper. We had all three. CPS recommended placement with us. The school principal had faxed a letter. Ruth Henderson served our children for 27 years and will serve her grandson well. Pastor Lewis submitted a pastoral declaration of community support. I submitted a timeline that tied every number to a choice. The judge, hair iron gray, eyes not unkind, read silently for a long moment. "Mrs. Henderson," she said finally, "your documentation is thorough." A small smile threatened her mouth. Temporary custody granted to Ruth and James Henderson. Parents' visitation contingent upon sobriety screenings and compliance with legal proceedings. I thanked her with my spine straight. My grandson squeezed my fingers twice. The code we'd made the night before for "I'm okay." Back home, I cooked dinner slowly, as if each stir of a wooden spoon could unwind the knot around our lives. My grandson's homework sprawled across the table, fractions, a reading log, a crayon comet. He said without looking up, "Grandma, can we make Saturdays a rule?" "What kind of rule, baby?" "Saturday mornings are pancakes and chess, and we don't talk about grown-up trouble." "Done," I said, and wrote it on a Post-it, because rules live longer when they're documented. Letters from jail arrived within a week. Brandon's first, apologies that ducked the word drugs, promises to do better, a sentence that tried to wring tears. "I learned this from watching you, Mom, how to hustle." I circled the word hustle in red and set the letter aside. Learning is not copying, it's choosing. Amber's letter came on paper that smelled like disinfectant and resentment. "You owe me for what we're going through." I didn't circle anything. Some pages are their own indictment. At Lincoln Elementary, the counselor met my grandson with a smile that reached her eyes. We created a plan: extra reading support, a check-in journal, one safe adult to ask for a quiet place when feelings came like storms. On the way home, he leaned into his seatbelt and whispered, "It's quiet here." That sentence was worth more than any account I had ever funded. Finances, my old battlefield, had new fences. I closed the joint emergency card, removed lingering authorizations, added alerts for every account. James and I met with a planner and rebuilt our retirement like two people who understood that peace is wealth and boundaries are interest. At church, some people hugged, some gossiped, most respected the math. I kept my voice low and my dates high. When women my age pulled me aside to whisper their own ledger of sons and daughters and debts, I handed them a clean notepad. "Start writing," I said. "Start now." One evening, the phone rang from a number that sounded like county. A woman introduced herself from Child Support Enforcement. "Given the placement, we'll be in touch regarding financial obligations from the parents," she said. I looked at my grandson, building a Lego tower with patient hands. "We'll be fine," I said. "But make the record say what it must." The planner slid a single form across our table and said, "There's one more asset to secure, your house deed, unless you want your son to contest it the day he's released." By October 3rd, 2024, the map of our lives had fewer detours. The house deed wore a new outfit, a revocable living trust with my name and James's stitched into the fabric, our grandson listed like a promise, his future insulated from anyone's sudden storms. The planner slid the finalized binder across our table. "This is the kind of quiet most folks don't know how to buy," she said. I smiled. "We didn't buy it," I answered. "We built it. On Saturdays, the kitchen smells like vanilla and rules. We keep the Saturday rule taped to the fridge. Pancakes, plus chess, plus no grown-up trouble. My grandson reads it every week as if the words might smudge when no one's looking. He studies the board like a cartographer, learning that knights move funny but always on purpose, that queens have range but kings carry weight. James lets him win just enough to teach him the taste of confidence. I let him lose just enough to teach him the recipe for resilience. At Lincoln Elementary, his reading log fills with ink that is mostly his own. The counselor says he asks for the quiet room less and asks for book recommendations more. Sometimes he still wakes with small thunder in his chest. We write those nights on the calendar, not to memorialize fear, but to show it has a date and, therefore, an end. In August, the court turned the page on Brandon and Amber. 18 months for him, 16 for her. Credit for time held. Programs required. The judge's voice was even. Consequences don't shout. Their letters come every other week. Brandon's are lined with apology and also with the old shortcuts, the kind of sentences that try to build bridges out of string. I send no replies, only photographs of his son fishing with James, reading in a library nook, blowing out 9 candles with a grin that belongs to no one but himself. Love can travel without explanations. It prefers to. Amber wrote once to say, "I stole her life." I folded the letter into the back pocket of the lake trip, receipts folder, and noted the date. Theft is what happens when you take what isn't yours. I took back what was. Church feels different now. Not louder, truer. The aunties still wear hats big enough to shade regret. Pastor still says the benediction like medicine you take with water. Sometimes a woman presses a notepad into my palm and whispers, "I started." I tell her, "Good. Keep writing. Numbers are a spine when your heart shakes." We planted a peach tree in the yard in September. It is a thin thing now, unpromising to anyone who doesn't believe in time. My grandson waters it with the seriousness of a surgeon. "Will it make cobbler next year?" he asks. "Probably not," I say. "Some sweetness needs more seasons." He nods like a man who has learned patience the hard way. At night, I put the navy tote back in its spot by the hall table. Not because I expect another war, but because keeping evidence close helps me sleep like prayer does. Peace is a habit. So are boundaries. So is love that doesn't confuse sacrifice with self-erasure. Sometimes, when the house is so quiet I can hear the clock commend each second for showing up, my grandson whispers from his doorway, "Grandma, how do you win without shouting?" I pull the blanket to his chin and say, "With dates and amounts, baby. With choosing, with keeping receipts." I turn off the lamp. The peach sapling leans toward the moon like a witness. And when a car slows outside and then moves on, I feel the old folders wait in the dark and think, if they ever knock again, the truth is already on the table. If this story gave you strength, help us by sharing, liking, and hitting the notification bell. We'd love to hear in the comments which part of the story you liked most. See you tomorrow.